Hello chess Neurites. Magnus Carlsen, the defending champion of World Rapid Chess Championship, is not just a fan favorite. He's the world number one in all three formats: classical, rapid, and blitz. He has won this championship 3 times in last 4 years, proving why he's one of the greatest players of all time, not just in classical chess, but also in quicker time formats. This year, the tournament is being held in New York with 180 players fighting for the title. But Magnus finds himself in a tough spot after end of day 1. After 5 rounds, he is ranked 83rd with 3 draws, 1 win and 1 loss. To defend his title, he'll need to win almost every game from here on out. So 8 rounds are left. Let's see if Magnus can stage an incredible comeback. So we'll get to know in these next 2 days. But for now, let's look at some of the interesting moments from his games from day 1. So in the first round, he drew the game, and this position is from the second round that he was playing against grandmaster Kedrick Dennis. So Magnus Carlsen has white pieces here, and let's try to understand what he did. So the material here is equal, but Magnus has better position since his rook is on the open file. Black has yet to complete the development, so some piece activity is there. So Magnus played a really nice move in this position to increase the pressure on the king side. He started with knight h4. He's not worried about this pawn. He's like, I want to put pressure on my opponent's king side. I might want to play knight f5. This is under pressure. Who knows? Sometimes such sacrifices might also happen. There can be knight e7 check type of ideas. So he wants to focus more there. By the way, it's really important also to see that queen takes b2 and that queen can get trapped. Always be careful about capturing those pawns, because rook b1, queen a3, and then there can be some ideas with rook b3. Although queen a1 check can happen, but yeah, queen on b2, not at one of the most comfortable squares for the queen. So that's why his opponent did not take that, and instead he played queen b4. So he's just improving the queen's position and he's vacating the square for the knight. So Carlsen continued. He played knight h4 to bring the knight to f5. Then knight b6 was played. Now Magnus played knight e7 check. So he's improving the knight's position to increase the pressure, and he's planning if black captures this, then rook captures, the rook gets on the 7th rank, and the king side will get even weaker. So the opponent played king h8. Now, please remember, if you are trying to put pressure on your opponent's king, you need more and more pieces. Just that knight is not enough. Magnus is like, I'll bring the queen as well. Then bishop e6 was played. He played this nice move, knight g6 check. He's like, take my knight, I'll take your bishop, and then the king side would get even weaker. So king g8, then he removed this defender, the bishop. Then he captured this pawn. So opponent also now captured this pawn. So because this knight is under attack, so his opponent is like, Carlsen won't be able to do much against the queen, but that was not the target of Carlsen. Now, king side is the target. So he played rook takes e6, sacrificing material, but weakening the king side. He recognized that queen is on the queen side, so the defenders are not there as much. So he just captured this. So f takes e6, then there was knight e4, not capturing the pawn with the check. He can capture anytime he wants. He's like, let's eliminate this knight, one less defender. Then the 2 bishops and the queen, that will be too much for black to handle. Then knight b d5 was played. He captured this. Once again, improving that knight's position. There can be knight f7 check type of ideas. And look at those 2 active bishops. So knight b4 was played, queen e7. This rook gets under pressure. Then rook a8 was played. Queen takes b7. He's capturing the pawn with the tempo. Rook f8. Queen e7 back. He's like, okay, took your pawn. So rook a8. Knight f7 check. The relentless pressure. That's extremely important. Relentless pressure continues. Knight h6 check. He's just capturing one pawn after the other. G takes h6. This is bad for black, and then he just captured all these pawns like this, and then it was a bit too much for black to handle. There are ideas for at some point bishop e5 as well. Even this check and bishop d6 as well, if the king goes to f8 and black sign. So a really nice example of bringing more pieces in the attack on the king side, and then how to make a breakthrough. So this was one of the really good games of Carlsen, but yeah, this was just only win of his on day one, because as I said, round 1 was a draw. This was round 2. He won this. Round 3 and round 4, he drew the games. Even in those games, he sort of barely escaped, because he was at some point in both the games having lost position, but then yeah, he managed to escape and get the draw. So it was clear that he was on his form. And in the now we'll look at his game 5 that he was playing against the grandmaster Lazovic Dennis. So this time Magnus Carlsen has black pieces and Lazovic is white. So let's try to understand how the game went on. So Lazovic in this position played knight a4. Very logical move. So at some point he might want to play knight c5, or at some point he might want to, if this knight is not there, queen has moved, then knight b6 also. So slowly just increasing the pressure on the queen side. He's not in any of the rush. So then Magnus in this position decided to complicate the matters. Now once again we have to remember that even if you are one of the greatest of all time, but if you break too many principles, then you ought to get punished. And this is what happened to Carlsen in this game. He played g5. He wants to complicate the matters. He's like, let's just make things complicated and then try to outplay the opponent. Yes, but what he's doing with this, he's actually weakening his king side. And his king is still in the center. If he castles on the king side, it would be a bit weak. So then Lazovic played knight e5. So he's like, if this knight captures this, now c file is there. If this knight captures this, then knight b6 type of ideas can come, and knight c5, that will become easier. So he's like, take my bishop. But Carlsen castled in this position. He's like, yes, I played g5, my king side is weak, but the center is stable, so white might not be able to do much. So in this position, so Lazovic just went back with the bishop to g3. Carlsen played h5. This is playing with fire, because he's pushing those pawns in front of the king to attack opponent's king, but when you push the pawns in front of your king gets weaker. Lazovic played h3. Carlsen is just continuing the relentless pressure. But Lazovic is just, sort of provoking Carlsen to create weaknesses in his own position, and then he will strike. H takes g4, H takes g4. And now Lazovic is striking back. He's now putting pressure on these weaknesses that has been created because of this pawn pushes by Carlsen. So knight h2 was played. Looks like a passive move, but this pawn is under pressure. Knight f6. Now he played a really nice move actually. Queen to d1. He recognized now it is not the queen side where he needs to do something. It is the king side, because those pawns have been pushed. The g4 has become weaker, and this is a bit weaker. Then it will fall next. So knight e4. Magnus is like, you take this pawn of mine, but I'll play knight takes g3, and your pawn structure will get weaker. White is like, I'm not in a rush. I'll play bishop f4. And then I'll do something. So Magnus played bishop g5. White captured the pawn. White is better in this position. And then in g7. So Magnus is not just down a pawn. His king is also weaker. And let's see what white did. So now Magnus's pawn structure is not that great now. It's very important in these type of positions to not be in a rush. Yeah. So if we are in a rush, we can give activity to our opponent. Don't do that. He played g3. Pretty calm move. He's stopping any of those queen h4 ideas. And what is the plan? Carlsen played rook h8. White is not worried. He played knight f3. His plan is king g2, rook h1. He's like, let's stabilize my position first. I'm up a pawn. f5 pawn of black is weak. So what I can try to do is I can just try to deal with immediate activity of Carlsen, and then I'll be able to push. So slow and steady. So rook a8 was played by Carlsen, improving that rook's position. King g2, queen f6, that knight on a4. So the action is now on the king side. So he's bringing those pieces back. d5 pawn is also under pressure now. Rook a d8, queen d3. Rook h5. So why he played queen d3? So the rooks can get connected and he can play rook h1. Queen h6. He's not worried. Just queen e3 in this position. Rook h8. So rook h5, queen h5. This looks a bit scary, this open file, but Lazovic had it covered because he played knight h4. It's going to be really tough task for Carlsen to remove that knight, and there are other weaknesses as well. So he played knight f6, defending that d5 pawn. Lazovic just brought the rook in this position here. Then Carlsen played king f8. So this was from then. Queen d3 was played. He's putting pressure on this pawn. By the way, he could have played knight g6 check here itself, but it's a rapid game, so sometimes such mistakes can happen. So you attack this pawn. And after knight e7, now he played knight g6 because if queen takes g6, then rook h8. Then Carlsen lost his queen, and then soon he lost the game. So it's a tough day for Carlsen, but 8 more games and 2 more days are left. Let's see what's in store for us. So thanks everyone for joining, and I'll see you in the next video.